Joining me now is the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Anna Applebaum. She's a staff writer for The Atlantic. She's also author of the forthcoming book, Autocracy, Inc., Dictators Who Want to Run the World, as well as Twilight of Democracy, The Seductive Lure of Authoritarianism. And thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being with us. In this remarkable article, you conclude that Russia and China are doing this influence peddling with the goal of electing Donald Trump. Talk to me about why you think those countries stand to benefit from that.
So first, it's important to step back a little bit and understand what it is that they're doing. These are countries, and it's Russia, China, but also others, Venezuela, Iran, other autocracies, want to stay in power. And their most important opponents are people who use the language of human rights, of freedom, of liberty, of democracy. They need to undermine those groups. They need to put them out of business. They need to convince their people that these ideas have no meaning and no purpose. One of the inspiration for people who fight for democracy in countries like Russia and China has always been the United States. And of course, the United States doesn't always live up to those ideals itself, but it stood for those ideals in the world. And Donald Trump is a leader who does not stand for those ideas. In fact, he mocks them. He himself is transactional. He has indicated he would do deals with whoever is most powerful. And putting him in charge of the United States, especially after January 6th, which was also understood around the world as an assault on American democracy, an assault on our capital, would undermine the idea of democracy that so many people aspire to in so many different places. It's not that complicated a story, but it takes place on a big scale, and I think it's important to understand the whole context.
And I want to get even farther into that context, because obviously we've discussed the fact that if Russia and Ukraine is not concluded by election and inauguration time, and it probably won't be, that is an advantage to Vladimir Putin. But more importantly, we have the most election-y year in recent history. More people are going to the polls around the world, and many of those countries are countries in which voters are giving up some of their rights. India, it's happening right now. What's the larger goal? If this isn't just about Russia, Ukraine, if this isn't just about China and Taiwan or China and relationships, how does this work in terms of undermining the concepts of democracy in America? You just elect enough people to Congress who just don't believe democracy is that important a thing?
It's even broader than that. It's convincing Americans that they shouldn't care about rights. It's convincing Americans that they shouldn't care about America's role in the world, convincing Americans to withdraw from the world, not to stand for any kind of ideals, as we have done for the last several decades. And it's also, there's a larger game as well, which is the autocratic narrative, which is now shared by so many countries and also by some Americans, is pretty clear. It's that autocracy is secure and stable and safe. Democracy is divisive, degenerate, and declining. And those in the United States who also say these things and who argue these things are also arguing, in essence, for a change of our politics, for deeper change. You know, they're hoping that if and when Donald Trump has a second term in office, that he will continue undermining rights, that he'll, for example, replace our independent civil service with loyalists, that he will change the way the United States is run. And this it's a convenient narrative for them, and it's a convenient narrative for autocracies in other places.
We have seen how this propaganda is causing havoc at the Capitol. You wrote that Republicans are both active participants and passive recipients of the propaganda. This reminds me of the conversations we used to have about disinformation and misinformation. Some people put it out and others willingly receive it and spread it. Talk to me about how the differences there and what you do about it. Can you convince some of these Republicans in Congress? Be careful. You're getting fed a lot of bad information here.
I mean, the best spokesman for that are other Republicans, and we've seen them starting to speak out in the last few days. One of the difficulties, though, now, and this is maybe another important point for people to understand, is that there are independent groups, there are researchers, there are academics, there are a lot of scholars and people who study this system and who seek to understand how it works. And one of the things that this Republican Congress has done over the last few months is tried to undermine them, create conspiracy theories around them, blacken their names, prevent them from having influence, convince social media companies not to pay any attention to them. I mean, there's a project almost not only to put out authoritarian propaganda, but also to undermine the people who seek to expose it and explain it. And so one of the first steps we need to take is for the government, the media, and everybody who understands what's at stake to make sure we have those people's back, to put pressure on social media companies to listen to them again, to continue to take down foreign propaganda, which they had been doing in 2020, and to continue to search out this problem, to define it and to explain it.
An amazing article, as always, Anne. Thank you so much for this and all of the information you give us to help us uphold democracy. Anne Applebaum is a staff writer at The Atlantic. She's the author of the upcoming Autocracy, Inc., Dictators Who Want to Run the World.